Hello, and a very warm welcome into Raising the Dots, a regular podcast connecting you with the people, ideas, and technology shaping the world of Braille and tactile literacy. I'm your host, Dave Williams. Coming up this time on Raising the Dots, we'll be hearing about Dot Canvas, a free app that allows you to create and curate your collection of tactile images for display on DotPad X. We'll also be checking in with Stanley, who works in governmental affairs for the American Council of the Blind. That's all to come this time here on Raising the Dots. Huge thank you to all of you who've tuned in, subscribed, liked and shared. It really means a lot. So stay tuned to the podcast and do tell a friend. Now, coming up this month, as you heard, we'll be hearing from Stanley a little bit later. But before that, let's check in with Dot and learn more about their free app, Dot Canvas, that you can use for creating and curating your collections of tactile images that you wish to display on DotPad X. We've spoken a lot here on Raising the Dots about how you use your DotPad X with your screen reader. That might be JAWS or NVDA or VoiceOver. But what if you actually want to draw something or access a library of content that others have made? Well, helping us to learn a little bit more about the tool that we use for that purpose, we are joined by Yuna from Dots HQ in Seoul in South Korea. Welcome in, Yuna, to Raising the Dots. Thank you so much for your time. Can we just start, though, before we talk about Dot Canvas, by learning a little bit about you and your role at Dot? What is it you do for Dot?
Hello, Dave. My name is Yuna, and I work in Global Customer Success Team at Dot. And I work with our customers to help them get the most value out of our products, DotPad, and ensure they have excellent experience with us.
Let's dive in then to Dot Canvas. For anyone who hasn't used it, what is Dot Canvas and who is it designed for?
So Dot Canvas is a software platform that allows users to easily create tactile content and print it through the DotPad. Users can draw images, insert Braille or tactile letters, convert and add PDF file, and even include audio, and making it possible to design a wide range of tactile materials with Dot Canvas. And with these features, Dot Canvas helps blind and sighted people collaborate more smoothly and efficiently. Dot Canvas comes in two versions. One is a mobile app, and the other one is a web version. The mobile app lets you draw on a screen, and whatever you draw appears instantly on the DotPad. So blind users can easily create and check their own content in real time. And it's also great for one-on-one interaction with family members or teachers. On the other hand, the web version is useful for teachers at schools for the blind or people with blind family members or co-workers of visually impaired colleagues who want to turn visual materials into tactile graphics. And in this way, Dot Canvas is widely used in everyday art activities for making educational materials at school, for family communication, and efficient collaboration at work, and even for running educational programs in museum and art galleries.
Yeah, it's a very powerful tool. I know from my own experience as a blind father to a sighted teenager, I was able to feel his signature for the very first time and also help him with some of his math revision this summer. So how does Dot Canvas fit into the wider Dot ecosystem alongside DotPad X?
I can say that Dot Canvas is one of software solutions that brings out the full potential of the multi-line display on the Dotpad X. So it makes it easy to transform the visual information around us into tactile content. I think it's a perfect reflection of our slogan, making our world accessible dot by dot.
So, in short, what problem does .canvas solve?
Mm, Traditional tactile materials take up a lot of space and cannot be easily modified. So, and on top of that, the world is filled with visual information that isn't designed with accessibility in mind. And that canvas aims to solve these problems, making everyday life, learning, and work more accessible and inclusive for everyone.
So, how does .canvas work? What makes it different from other tactile drawing tools, do you think?
So, that Canvas app, you can draw directly on the touch screen or use the web version to drag shapes onto a blank canvas with your mouse to create tactile graphics. And on the app, every stroke you make is printed in real time on the dot pads, while on the web version, you can press the print button once you're done drawing to send it to the dot pad. So you can also import images and turn them into tactile graphics within that canvas. Other tactile drawing tools that print on paper, that canvas lets you easily create, edit, and update your work anytime. And if you want to change something after printing, just erase and redraw it. And plus, portability is another big advantage. 100 tactile contents consisting of 100 pages made with the canvas take up the same space and weight as a single dot pad.
Yeah, hopefully it addresses that problem that we as blind people often face of having very limited access to a small number of tactile images. Can you describe how blind and sighted users collaborate then using .canvas?
I think good collaboration starts with communication. So when there's a need to share visual information, that Canvas acts as a bridge that enables smooth and effective communication. Tactile graphics often convey image information more accurately and efficiently than long verbal descriptions. So thanks to the automatic Braille translation feature, even users who don't know Braille language can easily add text or notes to the page description. This makes it a powerful tool not only for everyday life and work, but also for educational settings. So here's an example. While a tactile graphic is displayed on the 300 cell multiline display of the dot pad, any text entered in the page description field of that canvas is automatically translated into Braille and displayed on 20 cell single line display area. So you can imagine that a teacher created and shared learning material through that canvas so that the students can use it for homework at home. Meanwhile, parents can see the exact content in text form on the page description section, making it easy to understand what their child is studying now. So this bridges communication between teachers and families, enabling smoother and more effective collaboration.
What Dot have created really is a significant breakthrough when it comes to refreshable Braille technology. Can you just talk about what technologies or innovations make this possible?
Traditional brain devices use piezoelectric cells, which can only be arranged in two or one lines due to technical limitations. Dot, however, developed its own dot cells that operate magnetically instead of using voltage. This innovation makes the cells smaller, lighter, and modular. They can be assembled freely like Lego blocks. By breaking away from the limitations of conventional Braille technology, Tactile made wide Braille displays possible. And this is the core innovation behind the dot pad and the foundation for everything else like dot pad, dot canvas, dot book, and beyond. And it all started with that dot cell.
With dot canvas, then, how does it in the real world support education and creative learning?
For that, I think I can share a real life story that captures this perfectly. So I once observed a teacher at a school for the blind who was passionately using that canvas during his science class. And the lesson was about how dew forms on the surface of a beaker filled with ice. So first, the teacher let the students touch an actual beaker. Then he drew its outline on the dot pad using that canvas and asked the students to explore the shape through touch. And he said, like, this is how the beaker we just touched looks as a drawing. What do you think? Then he drew small squares inside the beaker to represent ice cubes and dotted around the outside to show tiny water droplets in the air, the water vapor we can't see or touch. And as he explained how vapor particles clump together when they meet cold air, he added more dots to the display, so letting the students feel the process in real time. It was like almost like a tactile animation. And finally, he erased the vapor dots and drew round dewdrops on the beaker's surface. The students could then feel those drops and understand how invisible vapor turns into liquid water. The kids were amazed, and honestly, I was amazed too, even as an observer. A topic like how dew forms isn't exactly the most thrilling lesson, but with the dot pad and dot canvas, the students were fully engaged and curious. These kind of interactive, hands-on learning helps children think more creatively and understand concepts intuitively.
Do you think there are particular subjects or activities that benefit most from dot canvas?
Black canvas is particularly powerful for subjects that rely on understanding shapes and structures like stem fields, where tactile diagrams can make abstract ideas tangible. And it's also used for learning new language. When studying foreign languages that use different writing systems, learners can explore the shapes of letters and characters through tactile graphics on that canvas. Feeling the form of each letter helps bridge the gap between visual and tactile understanding.
I know from my own experience as a blind person, learning to use tactile graphics can be really hard. How do you see dot canvas changing the way people learn tactile graphics or art?
I myself love art and drawings very much, so I can say that the canvas is an ideal tool for discovering the joy of drawing. It gives users instant tactile feedback, so you can literally feel how your idea is taking shape in real time. Bringing an image or your imagination into the physical world is deeply satisfying and immersive. You can even lose track of time while doing it. Of course, there are many ways to experience art through touch, but sometimes you just want to sketch or doodle freely. And I think that's exactly what that canvas allows. Like picking up a pen and paper, anyone can start creating with that pad and that canvas. And even better thing is you can share your artwork through that cloud. connecting with others who are creating tactile art. And we hope it becomes something like a Pinterest for tactile graphics, like a space for sharing creativity through touch.
What's the response been like from early testers or teachers?
Sessions were full of surprise and excitement. Many users were amazed when they first experienced that canvas, especially when they could feel something as personal as their own signature or a loved one's handwriting for the first time. They instantly recognized how innovative this technology was. Teachers were even more enthusiastic. They could see how the canvas could help expand the way students think and bridge educational gaps. And watching their students explore, engage, and learn in new ways left them genuinely excited about the possibilities for accessible education.
Have you learned anything surprising from how people are using it?
Um, One of the most memorable examples I've seen was that teacher using that canvas in class almost like an animation tool, like making small changes to drawings to communicate scientific concepts step by step. And the students' faces were so bright with curiosity and joy. And in my personal opinion, that is something like pretty rare during class. And I've also seen kids using that canvas at home in playful way. For example, a sighted sibling might draw something on the canvas, and their blind sibling tries to guess what it is by filling it on the dot pad. Seeing them laugh and play together showed me something powerful, that the canvas isn't just about convenience or accessibility. It's also about connection, joy, and shared experiences. And that realization was truly moving.
It's often said that accessibility is a journey rather than a destination. What accessibility features has Dot built into the experience?
Their That Canvas app has three main modes: that Canvas navigation mode, draw mode, and menu navigation mode. And let's say that you've been drawing and need to take a short break. When you come back, you might want to find where to continue your drawing. But if you start touching the screen right away, you could accidentally draw unwanted lines. That's when Canvas navigation mode comes in handy. In this mode, you can move your finger over the canvas without drawing, while the dot pad shows a tactile cursor indicating exactly where your finger is. Once you find the right spot, just switch back to draw mode and continue your work. There is also menu navigation mode, which makes it easier to explore and select drawing tools. And you can switch between these modes using the DotPad's function keys. And the same keys also let you access various other features like selecting tools, adding or deleting pages, and more. Like all designed to make Dot Canvas intuitive and accessible for everyone.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate some of the extra pieces of information that you can add to images in Dot Canvas, where you can have a Braille description and an audio description, and all of that can help deliver, truly immersive experience. How do you think Dot Canvas will evolve over time?
Right now, we are working to make the Dot Canvas web version even more accessible while continuously developing new features. And the platform is evolving every day thanks to the efforts of many people behind the scenes. And that canvas will continue to grow into an even more user friendly and versatile tool for creating tactile graphics. And we believe that before long, when people think of tactile graphics, The first thing that comes to mind will be that canvas.
So I guess what you're saying then is over time, dot canvas could lead to new ways of sharing and publishing tactile content.
Yes, absolutely. With that canvas, a platform that allows anyone to easily create tactile content, and that cloud, which lets users share their creations just as easily, we're seeing the beginnings of a new culture of sharing tactile media.
And you know what excites you most about the future of tactile creativity?
I honestly cannot predict it. So when I first learned about that canvas, I imagined its value in a fairly straightforward way. But after meeting real users, I realized its true potential was far beyond what I had expected. People are using that canvas in ways that are incredibly creative and inspiring. Their imagination is what truly brings the technology to life. As more people start using it, I can only imagine the variety of new ideas, workflows, and learning experiences they'll create. And one thing I can say with confidence is that canvas will continue to bring users fresh, innovative experiences that they've never had before, like experiences that inspire them to think beyond limits and explore new possibilities through touch.
If you'd like to try Dot Canvas for yourself, search Dot Canvas on the App Store or visit Dot's website, dotincorp.com. Yuna Seo from the customer success team at Dot, thank you so much for joining us on Raising the Dots.
Thank you, Dave.
Huge thank you again to Yuna Seo from Dot for all your information about Dot Canvas. And if you're using Dot Canvas to display content on Dotpad X, we'd love to hear from you. How's it going? If you'd like to get in contact, it's the usual email address, info@dotincorp.com. That's info at dotincorp.com. You're listening to Raising the Dots, connecting you with the people, information and technology shaping the world of Braille and tactile literacy. And today we are joined by someone right at the heart of advocacy in the United States. Claire Stanley is the Director of Advocacy and Governmental Affairs for the American Council of the Blind and will be known to many of you from her appearance on Disney Plus's show Pick of the Litter. Claire, great to have you with us on Raising the Dots. Thank you so much for doing this. Welcome in.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation, and it's great to be here.
You've been in this role with the American Council of the Blind as lead for government affairs now for 2 years. What was the first thing that you were keen to change?
I don't know if I would say I wanted to change anything as much as just to really dig my heels in and get us involved in everything we could in DC. Whenever people ask, what are the issues that impact the blind people? What issues do you want to work on? I will say, well, almost everything touches the lives of people who are blind. So when it comes to policy in DC, I think I was just most excited to just dig my teeth into employment, education, transportation, social security, every policy topic you could think of. So just really excited to put or get our hands on, let's see how many analogies I can use, get our hands on every issue we possibly could.
Obviously, this podcast is about Braille and tactile literacy. You lost your eyesight at the age of 9. When did Braille stop becoming a chore and really become part of who you are?
I can think of loving Braille even as early as elementary school. When I first started learning Braille, I was always a voracious reader. So I remember my TVI, my teacher, the visually impaired, would give me hard copy Braille back in the 90s, early 2000s. I'd get those big Braille books that are, 5 inches thick and what have you. And I remember just devouring the Braille. So even early on, I remember just loving to use it. But in my career, especially, I just can't imagine not having Braille. I always tell people, no pun intended, I'm a visual learner. So just being able to have a Braille display next to me to take notes, I literally cannot imagine doing the work I do without just, I think of it as my yellow legal pad next to me. Without my legal yellow pad next to me, in the form of a Braille display, I just can't imagine not being able to do the stuff I do. So.
You've studied political science, communications, and law. Which of those disciplines do you think shows up most when you're fighting for access today?
I think a little bit of all of them. Of course, having a JD, a law degree, is really helpful because I understand the way our system works. But I definitely am thankful for all three of my areas of study. Working in Washington, D.C., having a degree in political science with an emphasis in the American government is hugely helpful because I understand the system. But communication, I studied as a double major because I wanted to understand what was most effective. So that helps as well. But then again, having a law degree. So I don't know if I can choose one. They're all very helpful. And I'm so thankful and consider myself blessed that I was able to get the education that I have.
Now, millions of viewers around the world, of course, met you and your guide dog, Tulane, through the show Pick of the Litter. What did that experience teach you about how the public sees blindness, and what do they still get wrong?
They definitely still always get a lot of things wrong. There's a lot of preconceptions about blindness and working with the service dog. But I think what I really appreciated about it was being able to talk about blindness and advocacy and all those kinds of things through a really fun, um, I'll call it innocent platform. Who doesn't love dogs, right? Everybody loves dogs. And you always hear the stories of people say, my cousin's hairdresser raised a puppy. I say that facetiously, but it's true. Raising puppies is pretty popular. And so it was just such a great platform to use cute Labradors to educate people on blindness. And then for me, I was working at ACB at the time, but in a slightly different position, but again, still in the advocacy realm. So I was able to talk about disability rights and advocacy in Washington, D.C., again, through a platform that's cute Labradors. So it was very fun to have again, I'll use the word innocent platform, but to tell a very great story about advocacy and our civil rights and those kinds of things.
Right, and I'm keen to explore that a little bit more. Did that visibility open any surprising doors in your advocacy work?
There was definitely a lot of opportunities where people in Washington, D.C. noticed me and knew who I was. One of the funniest stories I like to tell people was I was on Capitol Hill one day. I want to say on the Senate side, don't quote me on that, but I was in an office with some congressional staffers, and literally the woman paused and said, "Are you the woman on Pick of the Litter?" And I just kind of giggled and I said, "Yeah, that's me." And then, kind of had to say, like, can we go back into the topic about this piece of legislation? So again, just such a fun way to engage with the community because, again, I say it, facetiously, but it's so true. Who doesn't love a Labrador? And so it's just such a great way to build those relationships and to be seen in the community. Even now, what is it, 5 years later, give or take, I still get stopped every now and then and say, "Are you that person from Pick of the Litter?" So it's just so great to have a fun plug where you see a yellow Labrador and it, triggers this kind of communication.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I think I might have done that as well, actually, when we met in person. Yeah, Pick of the Litter was definitely a pandemic watch in this house. We loved it. So,
Yep.
Look, let's bring it back to Braille then. Can you share any recent moment when Braille clearly outperformed audio for you? It's not a competition, right? We all love our audio and many of us use audio books and talking screen readers and all the rest of it, but sometimes only Braille will do. Have you got any examples of when that has been the case for you?
Well, I'll go back to what I talked about earlier. it's definitely not a competition, but I do think it's important to know who you are. And like I said, no joke, I am a visual learner. And so for me to see the words really does make a difference. And so for me, like I was saying earlier, even on an everyday basis, being able to read my notes in front of me, it really does help me do my job. Sure, I could write it down in a Word document and read it on my computer with JAWS, but it just doesn't click as fast for me and it just isn't as efficient. So for me, it really does make a difference just on a regular basis to have it. It's not recent, but going back when I was in law school, so starting, I guess, 13 plus years ago now, I asked for my textbooks in hard copy Braille because these days it's so common for disability offices to just give you your books, in an electronic format so you can read them in whatever's platform you want. But I asked for mine in hard copy Braille because even the structure of a case is important. You see the title, you see the summary, you see the judge and the citation. So even that like outlining and structure was really helpful for me. And when I have it on my computer and reading with JAWS or even like downloading it onto a Braille display, it loses all that structure that really helped me kind of put the pieces together. So even in that respect, I was like, no, I need it in hard copy Braille. And it made all the difference.
Tactile diagrams, they can be hit or miss. What's one that's really worked for you and what made the design so effective?
I don't know if I can think of any ones recently that have been super helpful, but I can answer the second part of the question that I think sometimes with tactile diagrams, less is almost more. If you try to add too much detail, it's almost like you're trying to make it too visual to where to the fingers, there's too much to take in. So I've learned that sometimes less is more to get across just the big main concepts because presumably with the eye you can take in more detail, this, that, and the other, but with the fingers, if you just do the basics, that's what's been really helpful. So I can't think of a specific example, but that's just a theme I've noticed over the years.
Yeah, I think you have to design tactile first experiences, right? Stop trying to replicate. People say, "Oh, can you put photos on it?" Sometimes people just instantly want a tactile of a photograph, which often, as you know, doesn't always make sense because of the amount of detail. Creating a tactile first experience tends to yield more impactful results, right?
I think that's really well put. Yeah, thinking of the tactile first. Because I think sometimes people say, oh, well, a picture of, I have a twin sister, for instance. Oh, you'd love a picture of your twin sister tactilely. But like you said, you just can't take that all in with your fingers in the same way. So I'm kind of like, no, give me the basics, but I'm not going to want to try to see what her eyes look like tactily. It's not going to compute in the same way.
We live in interesting times, of course, said nobody ever, and things could have changed radically between this recording and when you hear this. But when you're up on Capitol Hill, what's the most overlooked policy lever, do you think, that could advance Braille and tactile access?
Ooh. Are you talking about a specific law or how we're advocating for it?
Yeah, well, a bit of both, really. Generally speaking, like how do we get Braille and tactile literacy higher on the agenda, and what would you have everyone do that perhaps we're not doing right now to really make the case?
One thing I tell people all the time, for instance, our members of the American Council of the Blind, when they're helping to advocate for law, is to tell their stories. And it sounds so simple, but it's so impactful because members of Congress, or I should say, I often joke, it's more often their staffers who are doing a lot of the work, but they're staffers who take meetings with people like me. I can tell them about countless laws and give them countless statistics, which are all helpful. But when it actually comes time to push forward a bill, a piece of legislation, knowing how it's going to impact their constituents is really important. In fact, I'll go to their office and I'll say, hey, there's this bill I want you guys to pass. And they'll say, well, do you have any members who are our constituents, and tell us their stories? Because that really helps drive home the point. And so, again, I can say, Braille literacy is great because A, B, and C. But if somebody can give their lived experience, that's really powerful. And those are the stories that people on Capitol Hill want to hear. So, again, I think sometimes people are like, oh, who am I? I'm just, another constituent, blah, blah, blah. But if you can go in and you can say, I am employed at X company, and because I have a Braille display and I can read my Braille, I can do my job so much better and give that real lived example. That's really powerful. And so I never want people to discount the power of their story.
That's brilliant. Yeah. The power of the personal story.
Mm-hmm.
We're riding a bit of a wave at the moment when it comes to multiline and dynamic Braille displays. Where do you think genuine progress has been made, and where are we still falling short?
It's definitely exciting to see the growth of the multi-line display. I personally love it. I think it's so exciting as somebody, again, who really appreciates and benefits from seeing the greater picture. Having multi-line Braille is really helpful in that respect. If I could, I still would have hard copy Braille books because I like to have that continuous ability to read, but for practicality's sake, having hard copy Braille just isn't going to work. So all that to say, having multi-lines is the next best thing. So I think that's really exciting. Of course, I think, one of the drawbacks is it's expensive for obvious reasons. Making new technology is always going to be expensive, especially with such a small population of users. So finding ways to make it more affordable and be able to get it into the hands of people who really need it and can use it would be really great. But just the advent of the technology just blows me away. The things that we can do with it now are pretty mind-blowing from what we had even 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Have you had chance to get hands-on with the dot pad, and what did you think?
I have. I got my hands on the dot pad. I want to say it the first time at a VSA conference, and I think I've seen it at a few others, and I love it. Again, just that multi-line Braille is beautiful. So I love it. I want it, and I, want to see more and more opportunities just to have multi-line Braille.
Speaking to the folks who produce these devices, if you could control a line in the budget, how would you allocate resources? Do you think we need, more hardware, more software, training, content, or something else? What would you fix first?
Oh, that's a hard question. I'm gonna use my lawyer answer, which always is it depends. um, but again, I think the first thing, selfishly, I think we need to do is the hardware because we just need to get more of it out there. And again, I think that multi-line display Braille is just going to be so advantageous. So I think just for practicality purposes, I think just working on the hardware is really great. But then I think also the software is really important to work on secondarily because the things that they're figuring out that you can do now with these Braille displays, again, is so impressive. I feel like for me in this stage of life, a lot of the what I'll call the bells and whistles don't ring quite as true for me because I just want the Braille itself. But all the bells and whistles about what kind of software you can use and pictures and formulas, that kind of stuff is going to benefit the students so much. I think about what it was like to be a blind high school student with math and music theory and all those things that were just so hard to do for blind students. And now the things they can do with that software on a Braille display, I think are just going to open doors for the younger students, especially. So I feel like I didn't answer the question just to say that for different stages and different populations, there's so many great uses. And so I want to do it all.
Let's turn our attention to the American Council of the Blind. What's one program or initiative or project that ACB has that you wished more people knew about internationally when it comes to Braille and tactile literacy?
So we are a membership organization and we're made up of several affiliates. I want to say we have something like 63 affiliates. And I say something like because it does change from time to time when new affiliates come or go. Most of our affiliates are geographic based. So something like 45 of them are state based, but the remaining, not quite 20, are thematic. And I say all this to say that one of our affiliates is called the Braille Revival League. And if you're a Braille reader, that'll make you smile because it's BRL or Braille. And it's all about promoting Braille literacy and doing the type of advocacy we need to make sure that in light of technology and what have you, that Braille literacy doesn't just kind of fall to the wayside, that all of the members of that affiliate can really testify to the importance of Braille in their life and really work hard to advocate, whether it be at the federal level for Congress to give funding or for kiddos in K-12, whatever the environment might be, just advocating for access to Braille for blind individuals.
As much as you and I are both hugely passionate about Braille and tactile literacy, we know it's not a silver bullet and sometimes things can go wrong. Can you tell me about a time when you had a kind of a tactile access fail, maybe a messy file or something didn't turn out right, the formatting went awry, and what would you do differently now?
Well, I'll tell you one funny one that wasn't necessarily about the formatting, but it just showed the lack of universality, I guess I'll call it. When I was in high school, I was part of the International Baccalaureate program. And if people aren't familiar with that, it's, as the name implies, an international program where high school students from across the world can take similar classes. And then when you go into college, you can show what you've taken and it can be transferable. So you can, show other schools what you've taken. Anyway, long story short, because most of the courses were based out of Europe, they did not produce my math test in Nemeth code. And if people who are not from the US don't recognize that, that's because Nemeth was named after Dr. Nemeth, an American mathematician. And that's where, at least where our Braille math code comes from. I'd love to hear from others what the math code looks like in other countries. Again, because Dr. Nemeth was American and that's our math code, I opened up my math IB test and the numbers were similar, but all the other signs were not. And so I was trying to read these equations and I couldn't read the equations. And it was this funny situation where it didn't even cross the director of our program's mind that, oh, even though, quote unquote, it's in English, it's from another country's system. And so the code might not be the same. Now, the US has adopted UEB since then, but still UEB is only for general literature. It's not the math code. So I'm not even sure what the math code is looking like these days for high school students, but it was just a funny kind of lost in translation. We think we use the same code, but we don't use the same code situation.
Yeah, if you want math, then specify which math code you want. I think UEB is used in some states and Nemeth in others. And, there are strong arguments for both. Let's not get drawn too much into that, but certainly specifying which one you need would definitely be
important.
Helpful. Yeah. So look, Claire, as we wrap up, for someone who maybe has drifted away from Braille a bit, what would be like your 30-day challenge to try and rekindle that Braille habit?
Just encouraging for people to, literally get your hands on it. There's so many different ways, at least here in the United States. I think this is heard all over the place, but here, at least in the US, it's so easy to get your hands on different forms of Braille, whether it be through a Braille display, through the National Library Service, or even hard copy Braille through the same services. And you can get everything from just a fun magazine to Harry Potter to, educational literature, whatever. My point is, whatever you want, there's something out there. So just get your hands on it and have fun. You don't have to be writing a PhD thesis. You don't have to be using it for the workforce if you don't want to, or you're not in that place, but just have fun. Again, we are so fortunate that through things like NLS, through Bookshare, and so many other resources, we have access to Braille. So just have fun with it to get started.
And finally, if we're chatting a year from now, What headline about Braille or tactile literacy would really make you smile? And what's the first step that we could take this week towards that goal?
Ooh. I think for me, what I would love to see, at least through like a political, congressional step here, would just be more funding for these kinds of resources. We're unfortunately in a situation where we are seeing a lot of cuts to education resources based on the day that we are recording this. There's been a lot of impacts to the Department of Ed. So all that to say, I would love, if nothing else, to just see more funding to go to Braille resources so that kiddos who need Braille can get it. So, it's not a fight to get books in Braille and that kind of thing. Also funding for Braille displays, since again, we're in, the 21st century. So that's how most kiddos get their Braille. So just more funding and access to the materials that kids need so that they can, again, literally have their hands on Braille and be successful. And to encourage that, I just always tell people, reach out to Congress to tell your stories and talk about this importance. I'll put the plug because I do it for work, so I always do it. If you want to call Congress to call the switchboard, all you have to do is call 202-224-3121. Tell them where you're from and you can talk to your Congress's office.
Claire, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your fire for Braille and tactile literacy. Keep leading the charge, and be sure to give Tulane a pat from all of us here at Raising the Dots.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Claire Stanley for your wisdom when it comes to advocating for more Braille and accessibility and inclusion when it comes to tactile resources. If you've got some thoughts about things work when it comes to accessing tactile information, do get in contact. The email address is info@dottingcorp.com. But that's it from me, Dave Williams, and the rest of the Raising the Dots team. Until next time, bye for now.